So this is some Tactica that I felt I really wanted to jump in and follow up based on some comments from a video that was posted some time ago regarding air support units. This idea of Battletech, yes, absolutely, mechs are king, and they're like 80 to 90%, 70%, the major focus of the tabletop. But once we bring in total warfare, if we look at the narrative, hovercraft, infantry, tanks, artillery, air support, it really begins to change the battlefield in a number of dynamic ways. And as wargaming enthusiasts, it's just another excuse to purchase more miniatures. Now, as we jump into some air units, and this is something that I want to branch into, sharing the units that I regularly play, and then sharing the units that I regularly face, and I'm not too happy about them because they're very effective. It's great when I use them. It's a little bit sad face when you use them. And then some experimental tech and some units that I'm looking at. This idea, if you're starting to make the jump to air support, the question would be, what should be your first support plane? And we're going to put things like warriors and VTOLs and hover helicopters to the side for a moment. We're talking proper attack planes. The first question, of course, in terms of effectiveness, how are we going to approach the game? Does your opponent potentially have dedicated air support units? Often the way that I'll approach a Battletech game, we figure out the battle value we want to play. And mechs are just an auto-include. That's given. Bring whatever mechs you want. But then we kind of go back and forth and say, do you want to play air units? Yes or no? Do you want to play artillery? Yes or no? Do you want to play combined arms, infantry, or tanks? Yes and no. So this way, the decision we make, and there's no right or wrong decision, I now need to make and calculate some of those decisions. If we say we're going to play air support units, I now have to decide, do I even want to take air support units? Or do I want to pump that battle value into mechs? Do I want to take some partisan tanks for some anti-aircraft? Or do I say, no, I'm just going to pour all my battle value into that? So this way, based on the miniature collection that I have, the miniature collection that my opponent has, it's an approachable game. They might say, Fritz, I'd love to start bringing in some air units, but right now in my miniature collection, I don't have any, and I don't really have any good dedicated defense for it, so maybe we skip it till next time. Give me a couple of weeks to acquire some reinforcements and get them tabletop and get them on the hex map. So within this approach, I say that picking your first air support unit. For me, it's the Mech Buster on all multiple levels. Now, if you've been following my Battletech channel for some time, you know that I love big guns. You know that I love autocannon 20s. I'm mounting AC 20s on everything. I've got the AC 20 Irby. The Mech Buster is take an autocannon 20 and put it on something okay armor. Could always be heavier, but okay armor. But make it really, really fast. Now, I know I said we weren't going to bring in VTOLs, but I regularly play a Karnov. This is kind of a rotary transport unit that is frequently used to drop off infantry. It's a great way to quickly get some low battle value infantry onto the table. I'm giving you license to go out and pick up some Karnovs. The question there, though, is also getting the most out of your miniatures, sometimes for the lulls, and I'm always up front with my opponent, so they know, I'll take the autocannon 20 variant because it's such a low battle value buy-in. And this is scary as an air unit because essentially terrain doesn't really exist. You're flying above the terrain. And of course, the rules of elevation, you can be really high, medium, or literally very, very low. And you got to calculate that elevation so you don't smash into things, or likewise be so high up that things can't shoot at you, but you can't shoot at them. But the Karnov is relatively slow, and it has even less armor than anything. The Mech Buster solves those two issues. You've got some okay armor, and you're relatively fast. Battle value buy-in, I think, is like 400. Doesn't seem like much. Like some light mechs are more than that. Yes, but this is only one autocannon 20. Now, tactically on the table, first thing, of course, Mech Buster. That's what it is. You're not going to be dueling with other air support units. So your opponent might bring something that will easily counter it and take it out. You might want to look at some other ground support units, the partisan tank, or some sort of air support. A great example, Blackjack. Just get a couple of AC2s on there to just kind of force checks and keep things out of the way. And it's got the range to pretty much touch everything. So if that air support is in range for you, you're in range for it. But the interesting thing about the Mech Buster and why I recommend it as a first plane to take is, one, it's fun on the table and it's going to get attention. You've got an autocannon 20, a very fast delivery system. And again, because you're not predicated on terrain, say like the Saladin hover tank, you're going to go right in and blast away. So it's going to get a lot of hate. It's going to get a lot of attention. It's going to be a lot of fun. If you connect, that is fantastic with how it works. You're going to move on the map, blast, fly off. Move on the map, blast, fly off. It has a specific role, so it's going to teach you pretty quickly, and again, at a low battle value, how air units work. The movement phase for them, understanding elevation, understanding how you drop in elevation, being able to make those calculations. And it takes a little bit of practice that when an opposing unit is shooting, they're shooting at and then up. So you have to calculate things a little bit differently with how they work based on elevation. They stack and just how those things operate. On the Tactica side, so that's going to teach you at a low battle value how air units work. On the Tactica side, there's a special rule for air units strafing, where essentially you light up a whole area. You literally strafe. And with an autocannon 20, if you can catch a strafing run, it's worth the price of admission right there. It is absolutely catastrophic and devastating. Now you're going to say, well, Fritz, the lance, who's bunching up that lance? Who's doing that? Well, remember, you're looking at a very above the hex map. You're projecting like the 3D hex map, and you're above that. In a Battletech engagement with the mechs, I'm looking to move from terrain piece to terrain piece. I'm looking for cover. I'm looking for elevation. I'm looking to hide behind stuff, park my longbows, park my LRM-20 carriers, behind tier 3, level 3 elevation, fire over indirect fire. There's places where organically, based on the hex map and based on the mission, where things are going to get grouped together. You'll have the speed to move in on that and catch things on a strafing run. And the first time you do that, you are massively, massively addicted. It is fantastic. So this unit being focused on just one thing, the Mech Buster being focused on just one thing, what this means is once you learn the rules back and forth, just take one. Just put one in. If it gets shot down second or third turn, low battle value buy-in, you're learning. But then as you get better, as a mech commander, as you get better chilling in your mobile HQ, now you start to set things up. You catch with a strafing run. That is absolutely crazy. And then if you use the modified rules, bombs, bring in bombs and catching stuff. Think of more precise artillery. That takes the game absolutely into new directions. And essentially now you could have potentially 2 layers in the game. You've got the hex map primary where you've got tanks and mechs. And then, yes, you have air units interacting with mechs and the tanks, but you can have an entire air battle. You could each have 4 or 5 air support units going at each other. And now you have to make a almost 3-dimensional decision. Do I fight off the air units and establish air superiority and take them out and then just blast all the mechs on the ground? Do I kind of do 50-50, keep some air units busy while I'm trying to bomb and strafe and attack mechs? Or do I just ignore those air units? Let them shoot me. I'm going to fly as fast as I can and just deal lethal, brutal damage to the mechs, the units, the artillery, the tanks, whatever it's going to be, combined arms on the hex map. So my first recommendation for that first purchase, literally one miniature, one model, just to get you started with the rules and some Tactica, would be the Mech Buster. Now I'm going to turn it over to my fellow Mech Warrior enthusiasts. We've only got, and again, Warriors, Karnovs, that's separate. You've already got those. If not, you want to get those into your list. Recommendation, jumping into air support, jumping into expanding Battletech in that direction. What one unit, aerospace or conventional, what one unit would you select?